So, coming up from Dave, presentation. Does anybody have any questions, or did he just talk you into death and submission? I'm joking. Does anyone have any questions based on what Dave was talking
Or anything. Doesn't have to be what I talked about.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, what would you recommend? There's a lot of companies, and I work in consultancies, a lot of clients where they're just excited about AI. They want to do AI shit, but not necessarily connected to value. So how would you take that and use the Scrum framework to translate that into initial discovery? They come to you and go, we want to put AI into our product. Why? Just because we do, it's cool and it can do things quick. How do we then translate that as quick as we can into a value conversation around we need to do the things right for the business, for the user, for the end value, and how do we get there?
So ultimately the teams, I'll start if that's okay, and then I think everybody else has probably got much better things to say about this than I have. But there's two places that AI obviously applies in any org. It's the ability to build product. And there's a lot of great opportunities to experiment with ways of doing better discovery, creating code, testing, using agentic systems to do tasks in a more defined way. And then there's obviously AI in the product itself. What I tend to encourage organizations to start the former before the latter, because it's that journey is incredibly valuable. And doing experimentation, you have a great tool called the retrospective that I would take that advantage, and I would try to position it around value to the team, solving problems that the team's finding, and really focus that. Then, as we explore and start building those capabilities out, I would then expand that into, okay, so what, looking at the product roadmap, looking at the goals that we're trying to achieve, looking at what we've learned, let's start talking about. I think it'd be very disappointing to not take this energy and use it, but to focus it. Let's focus it initially on how we're working so we become the better team, and then we use that experience to better inform our product. That would be my approach. And retrospective is a great tool, and using it and providing space in the sprint for those activities, for that time, particularly not the using it, but the coming together and discussing it. For instance, we have twice a week now, we have sessions at scrum.org where the teams bring what they've been doing from the last retro and from the experience that they got and how that's applied.
I think what I would be encouraging is, where are the pain points?
Yeah.
And on the specific roles in the Scrum Guide, where are they unable to meet their accountabilities because they're tied up doing things that are outside of those roles? And can anything be automated to free up time? So, we said earlier about Scrum Masters, the job descriptions often being project managers doing Scrum. Well, what project management can we do using AI to free us up to actually focus on the things that matter in Scrum? And that's the way I would approach it.
I'd say it still comes back to needs, does it not? Users, needs. AI hasn't changed the needs. It's just made it, new solutions possible or different solutions possible. And surely it's our job as product development people, professionals, to get creative. New things are possible now that didn't used to be, or they weren't economically possible. Let's say they weren't necessarily viable. I think we all have to be challenged a little bit by that.
I do think the excitement's a really interesting thing. We've got an opportunity probably that we haven't had before to connect even closer to the business.
Yeah.
One of the things that you were saying earlier is it's been a problem, as old as time, of getting technology and the business, whoever that is, to connect. The business are excited about technology.
Again, yeah.
And how can we then utilise that to get them even more excited about making a technology product that actually works for the customer?
Matt, any thoughts?
Two things. One, there's a lot of excitement. You can definitely use that. The challenge is that we're going to see by the end of this year and into next year, we're going to see a bit of a reset as organizations understand how challenging it actually is to operate large-scale software systems, we're going to see a bunch of organizations go, oh shit, we fired all the people who actually have a clue. And just a bit like year 2000, they'll be hired back at like 10 times the rate or whatever. But genuinely, like, operating systems at scale is difficult, and AI, there are some ways to use AI, particularly traditional AI, to help with that, as in non-transformer based AI. But there's going to be a bit of an earthing moment, if you like, when reality actually hits. And we're not there yet because there's a load of organizations like churning out a load of code and putting it live, and it's kind of working all right. We haven't got to the point where we've lost the understanding inside the organization yet. So we'll see that starting to come out the back end of this year and into next year, and there'll be a bit of a reset there. And so some of that enthusiasm will unfortunately kind of dissipate, in the sense that, oh, it's a bit harder. This is really hard, this technology stuff. A bit like with VB6 and macros in Excel and all that crap from the 1990s. It's the same stuff. And the intent is good, empowering non-technical or business users to be able to build things. It turns out building stuff is hard. Representing knowledge using software or code is hard, and you can't hand wave it away.
Got a question at the back?
Yeah, it's just the getting experience with it. So the company I work for, we're doing a lot with AI. And the devs are working really, really fast, and we're churning out loads of stuff, but it's almost like the product that's coming in can't keep up. So we're getting lots of teams churning through the work and then going, what do we do now? And it's like, that's where the bottleneck is. And it's just interesting to kind of get an experience or thoughts on, not necessarily how you can make it work, because we're throwing like, oh, well, you just need to make the BA work faster because you throw in AI and it's all going to be fine again. And I sort of work in the Agile coach space, and everyone's kind of looking at us going, how are we going to make this work? And it's
Question: How much of that work is actually resulting in value for the customer or user? Like, how much of it is effectively busy work? How much of it is actually meeting their needs, like Royd was saying?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I don't know. Yeah.
It's not criticism. It's just genuinely like.
There's a question. I've Charlie, Mike, Fiona, Bruce here.
Yeah,
so the question, gentleman in the background with the blue polo shirt on.
Yeah, so I currently work for a government department, and we spent a lot of years having that service model of there's a business where the service provider with digital and IT side of things. I've spent a lot of time arguing with people about the governance in government departments, slowing things down and never doing it. I loved your idea of Scrum could help put some governance around the AI that people start to use. But I do feel like I might be going back with my tail between my legs. So.
Don't you find that most governance is performance, and it really isn't governance? So from my experience of working a lot with pharmaceutical companies and finance companies, it's just pretend stuff. It's busy work to pretend that you're actually. I mean, ultimately, governance is about managing risk and ensuring that choice is made in a transparent way, whether that be an investment choice or release choice, whatever the choice is. And what we tend to find is governance is this sort of like pseudo process on the back that kind of like on top of actually delivering, making those choices and making sure that the most value and managing risk. What I think we've got the opportunity to do, and I think that you highlighted it here, is to connect those two things together again. So governance becomes an active part of definition of done, of the sprint review, of the choices. The other thing that's really interesting about AI, that we talked about the example today about Tesla and the windscreen wipers. The fact that, the auto windscreen wipers, so I visited the factory in Fremont, and the guy that I was there told me this story, and I don't know if it's a true story or not, but I've experienced this with the windscreen wipers, that do they start slow and then get faster? Do they start fast and then they get slow and it's on auto? Do they sort of like, and apparently that feature has been updated 1 million times because the team has no conscious, they don't know about the choices. And apparently some customers want it to start slow and some want it to start fast, and some, there's been reports and data. And so governance is all about, I think, also documenting some of those choices in a more effective way. So making that part of the process. I think there's some interesting opportunities that we can actually make governance good again. That sounds like a red hat. So I'm not gonna... Sorry. Is that...
Well, all I was going to say is I think when people think about governance, I think like Dave was saying, it's kind of performative thing. Thinking about governance as a bunch of stage gates or sign-offs or something, I think is it's necessary to get a bit more creative. I mean, failing fast is a form of governance, isn't it? It's about reducing risk, and I think we're in a world now where there are new creative ways of applying governance.
Question from the very good-looking gentleman standing up.
Thanks. I didn't pay him, so I think on that theme, given that the team are becoming less of a bottleneck in terms of churning the thing out, what would you say to the prospect of having, as part of the framework, a historian who actually documents what really happened and why, rather than the team's weird narrative about, anyone that's read release dates?
I think a historian part is,
And a philosopher as part.
I'm not sure about philosophy.
Whether or not we should do the thing that we're doing next, because they seem far more pertinent.
I think documentation is a super interesting topic that I'm sure we've been around the houses on many, many times. And history is written from the point of view of the person that wrote it. So I think it'd be really interesting if we get the collection of the AI robots that are, those dogs running around, I don't know. I think there needs to be a collective narrative, because if the history is written by one AI bot, it's going to be written in a really specific way.
Anyone else? What's it?
Well, if you think about how large scale, like web scale or cloud scale systems are actually possible to run at scale and restore quickly, it's through observability.
Yeah.
So logging, metrics, telemetry, and that stuff is if you go back to 2007, has anyone got a book called Release It, the original version, Release It from 2007? It's amazing, because there's an entire chapter that says how to write your own log aggregation system. It's just before all the cloud systems came along and things like New Relic and or Datadog and all that stuff came along. You clearly wouldn't do that nowadays, but in 2007 that was something that someone felt they had to write. So since then, observability as a thing is you just consume it. It's just a thing. It works really, really well. It might be expensive in certain cases, but whatever. The point is, it's there. And it enables you to run these systems at scale. One thing that's emerging now is organisational observability.
Yeah.
So using metadata or even other data from Slack and Teams, Jira, and wherever in the organisation, using AI to slurp that out, look at the intent, look at the meaning of what's going on, and effectively log, as in do kind of write log messages to say, this kind of thing is happening here, this kind of thing is happening here. It will end up being having the same kind of power, or even more kind of power. In other words, we can now observe what's happening in the organization and reason about it and say, this event happened here, is this what we want? Go back in time. Oh, that event happened there. Oh, that's why this thing ended up happening over here. Right, that makes sense. Right, we'll need to correct that in the future. So, and that kind of organizational observability tool is just starting to emerge. So I think it's going to be very, very interesting. It's being the historian effectively, but through kind of tooling instead of a person.
Just a question on the road.
Yeah, one of the biggest criticisms I see levelled at Scrum at the moment is the fixed sprint length, because the idea is work and goals are different sizes. Yeah. So why have a fixed sprint? What would your answer be about that?
Gosh, and yes, and you don't have to have you have to have a sprint. It can be variable. The reason why it's a fixed sprint is to reduce the complexity in the system, to allow other people to participate in it that aren't necessarily with you at that moment, stakeholders in particular, but others as well. So I think that building the structure, Scrum's all about human beings. And I think that having that fixed sprint is, I think, an incredible cadence and order is incredibly powerful. And I don't think we'll go away to a continuous flow of delivery model. I think we'll still stick with sprints going forward. However, how they're managed might be a little different, and how how they're used might be a little different. But it is an interesting criticism. And the question is, I think majority of people, though, still think it's a mechanism to release stuff. You can release 1 million times during a sprint. 1 million might be a lot, but you can release a lot. You know, once must be once. And that's also not described, you know. So I think that's going to become more the thing. And the reviews and the retro and the stuff is about the humans that running that system, which could be any cadence.
And the consistent sprint lengths are a form of that governance that we've been talking about earlier as well, you know. How do you measure things? You've got to keep something.
Some predictability, a rhythm, a pulse.
I'm going to say, and you have to have some way of, some constraint to reduce or to keep work in progress in check,
And also
you know.
from like an overwhelm point of view, if you've got people, continuous delivery is great for many reasons, but from trying to know what you're doing at what point, someone was saying earlier, like we're trying to do so many things at the same time. If we change how many things we're doing in a period of time, we're going to get ourselves in even more of a pickle.
I do one thing though. The world has decided that 2 weeks is a sprint. No idea why. I think the world is going to decide it's a week. And I think that's going to happen.
We do a week now,
and which I think will be nice. Sorry.
Hal, you have your hand up.
I work for NHS England. I'm transforming my teams into the Nexus framework. All of my teams are working in
I wrote a
Scrum.
book on that.
Yes, you did.
I do apologise. I've got better since I've got AI now.
What are the common themes that you see that organisations make when implementing Nexus?
They don't integrate frequently enough. They don't integrate. So the idea of a Nexus integration team, sorry, this is very geeky and we can probably talk offline because most people are like, what is Nexus? It's a way of getting in the country, isn't it? Wasn't that the thing? But the objective of Nexus was really to allow multiple teams to work together on the same product in an effective way. And one of the things that Ken observed and I observed was that ultimately software needs to be integrated a lot more frequently than it was in most organizations. Teams wandered off, built their stuff, and then waited a month before they even put it together, if ever, and then it was a complete disaster. So the idea of Nexus is that we have a mechanism that ensures that is happening. Nexus integration, planning, Nexus and the net and things like that. I mean, it's not rocket science and none of this stuff is.
I don't think it's rocket science. The problem is that we're working in a system and not just products. Therefore, we have many integrations within a system.
I would encourage the Nexus to be the size of the whole system.
Exactly.
And then I would recommend, and I think AI gives us that opportunities, but like those Rabobank people were saying, we can reduce the number of teams involved in it, thus reducing the integration points and reduce that cognitive overload, that synchronizing them and coordinating them. And then we could use something like Nexus, but we can talk offline about that. Sorry.
Well, I've got a comment on that as well. But go on. Can I just say one thing as well? For me as well, I think that one of my, I hear people have different opinions about safe and things like that. For me, it's an engineering challenge to reduce dependencies all the time. And I don't know how common it is nowadays, but an engineering point of view often is, it's all this stuff is like project management, isn't it? It's I don't want to get involved in that. Good engineering has an absolute responsibility to contribute to agility, I'd say.
But I don't think it's the engineers that's having the problem, it's the product people having the problem.
So, and that's the reason why Nexus was all about that, but it actually empowered a group of people to reduce dependencies that were cross-functional. Almost like a Scrum team, we called it the Nexus integration team. Sorry.
I've not read that book either.
Oh, it's a classic. Not many people have.
You had a question?
Yeah. Hi, I'm Sheetal. So I work as a senior consultant very closely with a lot of digital transformation programs across public sectors. So from past couple of years, I work with various public sector organizations who try to adapt Agile, trying very hard, but I'd say they end up following partial agile. So, for example, just doing daily stand-ups or trying to log in all the tasks in Jira without having a goal or a timeline or no outcome. So I understand it's like the complex structure, hierarchy. So how do you handle situations where governance, budget, a lot of legacy structures, suppliers limit the agile delivery?
I know you've all suffered that as much as I.
Yeah.
So what I've seen recently, one very large, very well-established UK financial institution and one very large UK government department, at least, and some other places too, is ultimately needs a real unlock from the CFO. It needs someone who's willing to fund things in a way which is not a series of projects. And because of the nature of these kind of organizations, this stuff is starting to happen. But it needs the license to operate from, the permanent secretary of that department or the CFO of the big organization or what have you. And then things start to happen. Genuinely, massive organizations, huge budgets, like absolutely mad budgets. Oh yeah, that's all just for this year, not just for the next 3 years. Like, what? And it's still not guaranteed to work, but at least the route is clear. But we're now at this point where we like you've said, you can't tinker around the edges or in the middle. It needs that level of kind of top-down support, and then ground up, bottom up, like activation from practitioners and professionals, and then all the way up. And hopefully you don't get stuck in the frozen middle.
Yeah. And that's really hard to achieve, isn't it? Like, depending on what level you're coming in to an organisation, are you in the detail of the delivery? Or are you getting that face time with the CFO to actually make that change? So I think it's a struggle that a lot of people say is very common. I think it's a misconception that more organisations are agile end-to-end than they actually are. I think it's something we all probably struggle with.
There's a saying, right? Money drives everything, and I think if you can get that alignment and change the incentives, the reason why Fidelity was not very successful with Scrum, even though they were incredibly successful at the start and in moments they were amazing, was because the incentive model was not aligned around cross-functional teams that are actually delivering stuff. It was aligned around a series of KPIs that were defined at the start of the year. Becoming the hero or the bottleneck was crucial for your job security. So everything was against it, and until they changed the incentive plans, it was almost impossible to change everything. Budget, incentive are crucial, from my experience.
Anything else before? No, I think covered. The gentleman in the black T-shirt there, you've been very patient. So.
Thank you. I'm Chris. Thank you for the opportunity to ask the question. A few questions ago was a good segue to a question I wanted to ask, which is around the fact that we're working, I'm personally working with the teams of humans as of today, not AI agents. And I love the fact that Dave, you referred to about Scrum being all about human beings. Now, you mentioned two things in your talk. One, a concept of sprints lasting one day, justified by how quickly things are moving thanks to AI. And a few sentences later, you've also mentioned the cognitive load that the developers are subject to these days, which is causing them to burn out faster. Now, I wanted to find whether you have a live, real example of teams that are actually doing one-day sprints, and if so, how their burnout is being managed, and how we could, as a delivery people, try to keep the balance between that mental overload and obviously limited capacity of our brains.
This is going to sound a little inappropriate, but I think I can go with it here. I think that the one-day sprints are a bit like teenage sex, right? Everybody says they're doing it. The people that are doing it very badly, and actually nobody's doing it at all. So so I apologise if that offended. No, I do want to get back in the country.
That's going to be the new Scrum guy as well.
Yeah, it's going to be the new Scrum guy. That's a good guy.
That's the tagline.
The reality is, yes, I do know organisations that are trying that. But I think they've missed the purpose of what a sprint is. And they've forgotten that. They're not getting their stakeholders to review. They're not planning effectively. They haven't got a sprint goal other than the things they're typing into OpenClaw or whatever they're using as the sort of orchestration agent. The reality is that they've sort of missed the point. However, they are burning velocity and they're burning down things and they're delivering, but I think they need to sort of take a step back. So honestly, the answer is no. However, if you want to watch a really interesting example, Jeff Sutherland has built himself a Scrum team in OpenClaw. And apart from the time it was taken over by a bunch of Chinese hackers, which it really was, and it attacked the world and became like FBI were involved, all sorts of exciting things. He has got some interesting learnings from it. There's a YouTube video that we can connect everybody to.
That's the team of AI agents.
But it is, but he's the product owner, but he's also the stakeholders as well. So it's not really, it's not very diverse, the perspective they're getting.
I read an anecdote somewhere that's effectively what product owners were always doing, was vibe coding. That their LLM was the development team effectively.
Yeah. But a team gives you so much more. We're just talking about that. A team gives you so much more than just the ability, a bunch of resources that deliver value. It gives you diversity of thought, ideas, experiences. It gives you the ability to provide choices and judgment. And yes, you can do that in a day. And if you've got access to stakeholders, you honestly can. But the reality is most organizations of size don't have that ability.
So, sorry, I'm going to have to call it towards an end just because people are going to be disappearing listening to the feedback and give away the 2 brilliant books. Ooh. Still here. But I have one last question. This is a question for all of you individually. So, am I the best presenter you've ever had? No, sorry. Thank you. Pretty quick giving away. What words of wisdom would you give to anybody coming into our industry now? So either fresh from university, fresh from school, there's all this stuff, Agile's dead, Scrum's dead, AI is taking your job, AI is here to help. What words of wisdom could you impart to anybody? So, be brave enough to go first.
Take a breath. Take a breath. This too shall pass.
Very good.
Listen more than you speak.
Ooh, I like
I'd say while there's new opportunities with new technology, AI technology, I think having some understanding of understanding things from first principles really helps get the best out of that. Don't just be a driver of the technology, kind of understand. It's still useful to understand how a compiler works.
Understand how the engine works and drive the car. Matt?
So a really useful diagnostic question that we've been using recently. I've been slightly surprised at how much like an X-ray it is, or how much it diagnoses, is this question. What value are you providing and to whom? That's it. Put that, print it out, stick it on your forehead or whatever, and like, because so many people, so many teams, so many departments, so many divisions, so many subsidiaries, so many groups of companies cannot answer that fundamental question at all. What value are you providing to whom? If you get familiar with like working through how to go about answering that question and then understanding the answer yourself in your current context, you'll have a chance at succeeding way more than loads of other people, organizations, whatever.
I think there was a word used today on the thing that we did that I wish I'd used, but I spoke before, so it wasn't. And that's curiosity. I think, and that really continues on your theme. And that puts the context to the curiosity, right? Asking that question, why are we doing that? What's that all about? How can we have amazing tools to do that. For instance, so Grok now is available in the Tesla, right? It's just it's just integrated with it, and your subscription pays for a subscription. And I mean, a really interesting question about consciousness with Grok. which is really unpacking, the underlying biases of the organization that it works for, which is really interesting as well. But that curiosity, that energy and that passion, we're in the best age we're at the best moment of civilization. I know it's dark and I know there's lots of doom and gloom, but we can do amazing things if you come with some curiosity and you put some context. That's it.
So thank you for participating. We could have loads of questions, but that was your panel. I think we should do this every month. Not you 4 or 5, because that would be way too much.